Just to intro this, guys, welcome back to Wally's World. Today we actually have Kaylynn Kullnat. And just to give a background on Kaylynn and I went head to head, toe to toe, to wrist to elbow in sales for years. Now I would call her she's basically a cousin to me. The reason we're even on this today is because Kaylin is actually a PhD in love science. So rather than me just spewing off my thoughts, I figured I'd have Kaylin on and it'd be more fun, more effective. So I think we've got Kaylin for about 20, 30 minutes today, and I've got some preloaded open ended questions. But Kaylin, first things first, why don't you just tell us a little bit about you, a little bit about your background, and then we'll hop in.
Okay, what should I say?
Who you are.
Should I actually say I have a PhD in love science?
That's up to you.
My name is Kaylynn Kullnat. I did go to Virginia Tech. Go Hokies. And me and Liam have been working together for almost 2 years now. He started a little before me, but I don't think he was competing with me, but mentally I was competing with him. We were always acquaintances until this past summer and we got a little closer. But I have a dog. He's a Jack Russell. My degree is actually in accounting, Liam, not love science. I am super into emotional intelligence, though. I think it's super important. I think everyone should know more about it.
Awesome. Thank you for hopping on here. I've got question number one, pre-question. You're currently single, is that right?
Yeah.
So everybody knows. So, how would you compare your mindset and your lifestyle being single versus when you're in a relationship? So, would you say you have more motivation, less motivation, you do certain things differently? Tell us about that.
I think it really depends on the person you're with. If your person is very supportive, they're going to make you want to do better. But you can have other partners where they can drag you down and bring you down. So I think to play devil's advocate here, it's really depends on the person and who you're with. And that also reflects on your self-worth and how you view yourself and what you think you deserve in your partner. But in terms of when you're single, your mentality is kind of depends. So if you're looking for someone, then it's kind of like you're seeking something, you're filling a void or something, rather to when you're not, you're kind of happy with yourself, doing things that you like, and usually the best things come along when you're just focusing on yourself.
So, would you say that you're objectively more effective when you're not in a relationship?
I don't think so, because I think that you can be in a relationship and still accomplish a lot of things. Because like, I think that your person can just be there for you and push you in the right ways. So I don't think that one is better than the other, but they both have their pros and cons.
Well, just to challenge you a little bit, I would say that I am definitely more effective when I'm not in a relationship, just because, bro, if we're talking about pure effectiveness in terms of whether it's sales, your business, maybe YouTube, whatever you're doing, everything requires time, which is a finite resource. And I think being in a relationship takes up a really big portion of that. And so, for that reason, whenever you're with someone in a relationship, I'd argue that I'm not saying you shouldn't date anyone, but I am saying that if you're in a relationship, that time you're putting into it is not going into whatever you're pursuing. Would you agree, or would you have something to add to that?
I think that I don't loving the right person is easy. So I think that if you're doing something that you're passionate about and you're like, let's just say starting a business, right? Yes, I get where you're coming from, where you said, oh, you would have to put more time and energy into that person than what you could put into the business. But I think that there's a way to make everyone happy and that like can make a business and be great at it and still have someone that you come home to and love. I think what it comes down to is loving the right person is easy. So like, if it's the right person, it's not going to feel like, oh, my energy could be better off in the business rather than on this person. Do you know what I mean? I think in hindsight, maybe that's a mental thing for you, the way your thought process.
I could see that. I think that segues perfectly into the next question, which is Is there or do you think there's such thing as the one?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think there's multiple parts to the one. Because let's say you're with someone for 20 years and they die, and then you find someone else. Does that mean you have two the ones, or how does that really come back? But I think that I don't really know if I believe in soulmates necessarily. Like, I don't think there's one person that you're destined to be with that's across the world or something like that. But I do think that everything happens for a reason. So, people in your life you meet for a reason at that specific time in your life. I think you meet people and you learn, no matter, I always agree that loving someone is never a waste. No matter if the relationship was really good, really bad, you always learn something from it. And you also learn stuff for yourself as well and what you want. And so I think that kind of goes to finding the person that you're going to marry and have kids with.
So you don't think it's a one and done. You think you could hypothetically have multiple people that feel like are right for you.
Because I can believe in the three love theory. It's kind of the first person that you love is that first pure emotion, infatuation, usually in high school or middle school. And then the second one is a little more serious, but you're still immature and you don't really know what you want. And then the third one is you've learned from those two past two people, and that's the one.
So do you feel like that's a result of just becoming more aware and intelligent around love, or how do you think that actually happens, or why that happens?
Why you find that last person and why they're like,
Why does that process go from, because it seems like it goes from you're completely unaware and it's just you're engulfed in this new feeling, and then the next one is, what is the second one?
it's a more serious one, but you'd like understand more of love and what it is.
And then the last one is it's the perfect one, is that right? So do you think that's just like you've taken enough shots on goal to hit gold, or do you think it's you learn something and gain some newfound knowledge around what a relationship should be, or do you think it's something that is just a phenomenon and we don't even know why it happens, it just does happen that way?
No, I definitely think that you have to date around or be with other people to know exactly what you want. I honestly don't really like high school sweethearts because I don't really believe in that. I think that it's adorable, don't get me wrong, but I think those people are people that are just comfortable and they don't want to step out of their comfort zone because you cannot tell me that someone you met when you were 16 is the love of your life. There's no way. And they're just not content, but like, what's the word? Settling, I guess, in a way, because that's what you say.
Comfortable?
Because when you're with someone in high school, that's all you've only been with one person. So you don't really know how great a relationship could be or the, does that make sense?
You're kind of naive. Perfect. My last question before I segue to what happens when a relationship doesn't work. My last question on the topic of being in a relationship would be if you could describe in words what quote unquote love actually feels like, what would you say to perhaps a person who maybe has never been in a relationship, or maybe someone who has but doesn't know if they've actually felt that feeling before?
I think love is very hard to quantify, that's the right word, because it's just so different with every single person. Because I could love, my love for my brother and my mom are two different types of love. But in terms of romantically, I think it's really hard. I think whenever you're like, let's say you hang out and like, you think about them the rest of the time you're away. That could be infatuation. What the difference between infatuation and love is that I think love is unconditional. I mean, how do I put this? If you still break up with someone, like you, a part of you will always love that person. That's what love is. Infatuation is you break up, you're like, oh, I hate them. I could never be with them again. But you love them and you would want the best for them no matter what. No matter if you're talking and the next I saw this TikTok, it was the next 10 years you just see through their Instagram feed, but you still love them from afar. That makes sense.
Well, that's insightful. So it's basically distinguishing between a toxic addiction and something where you can actually love them from a distance and just be happy for whatever future they have without you. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I think that is a perfect transition to it's really interesting when, and maybe more relatable, or maybe that's just me, but what happens after a relationship doesn't work. So I think you and I were talking about discussing this, but it's interesting how when a relationship ends, you don't talk, you probably unfollow on social media, and you try your best to move on and almost forget about them in a way just to keep them off your mind and try to create your own new life. But there's an inevitable period where both ex partners are still emotionally tethered to each other, yet they don't really voice that feeling because they can't. What do you think are the best protocols to get past that compulsion to maybe tell the other person how you feel about them? Or do you think, just tell me about that.
You're saying that first week or 2 weeks after you break up, how you definitely both miss each other, but you'll never say that. Is that you're just like
And I guess I'm under the preconceived notion that you would say you shouldn't tell them that you miss them, right?
correct? Cause
How would you go to get past that and just talk on that a little bit?
yeah, I think that it's very important when you break up to do no contact. It's super important because you guys broke up for a reason. It's not I do not like couples that like get back together, break up because you're just giving up. If you're coming to the point where you're breaking up with them, you're giving up on the relationship and that's not going to work out long term.
Right.
And so if you're like hard, cold, we're done, those 2 weeks, I think men and women handle it very differently. I
Hmm.
think women really like, that raw, feel all that emotion. They're like, it's the worst when you like, wake up the next morning and you don't do that good morning text or that good night text. Because me and Liam have talked about this. When you're in a relationship, there are certain things that just become a habit. Good morning, good night, I love you is kind of a habit nowadays. And so when you take that away, you feel really lost and confused. You're just like, there's a hole in you. Oh, what do I do now? But when you're remaining no contact, it's important because you need to move on. And if you're just like, if you text them, then it's kind of just like holding a string to the relationship, and then you would never find the true person that you need to be with later on. You need to
Okay.
let go of that string as soon as possible.
So it sounds like it's almost a lack of discipline to reach out prematurely and tell them how you feel. You're not really committing to what you guys both decided upon. So, what are some things someone going through a breakup should avoid and why? I guess
Hmm.
apart from what we just talked about, texting them.
I think it's really hard to say because I think everyone goes through it really differently. What I do is I watch Disney movies. That's what I do because it reminds me that I don't know, it's just something I've always done is I watch Disney movies after a breakup because I think it reminds me of being a kid again, and Liam loves this expression that, "Oh, we're just a bunch of monkeys on a rock." It kinda sets that in stone that, like, feels like the world is ending because you broke up with this person, but, like, at the end of the day, you have so much more value that you can give to the world in your life than this one person. It's a little harsh to say, but it's true. I think feeling your emotions. I journal a lot. Whenever when I break up with someone, I'll have a dedicated note for each person I've ever been with. And what I do to get over someone is anytime I think of them or I want to text them, I write it in my notes instead of texting them because you need to move on. There's no way you're going to move on if you guys are still talking. So there's that. And then I think hanging out with friends is really important, not isolating yourself. I think like first week or a couple days, it's normal to isolate yourself, but after that, you need to put yourself with your friends and get those social interactions again.
So, I think rumination and overthinking about your feelings, it's clinically, it's a quality of depression and it doesn't help things. But I think there's value to unpacking your feelings and not pushing them out, distracting yourself. But it seems like there's a kind of balance between not ruminating in your thoughts and sitting there and obsessing over your thoughts and your pain, but also distracting yourself enough to get some space from it and find peace in the distraction. What do you think that balance is? How would you describe that? How would someone go about not overthinking about the pain, but also not falling too far into a distraction that they never actually heal the wound.
I like this quote. There was a before you, a during with them. Wait, there's a before them, during them, and there will be an after them. So, and that's part of life. People go in and out of your life, and I think it's important to realize that they're not in your life anymore, but they're in your life for a reason, and you just need to process your takeaways or your silver linings from that relationship. To not sulk on it too much is just, I don't know. You have your, let's quote, there is an after them. You can be someone else after them. It's not impossible. I also wanted to touch on this too. Whenever you go through a breakup, it's really like there's this natural instinct to do what if questions. Oh, what if I did this instead? What if this happened? What if that is what creates that obsessive thoughts of, oh my goodness, you cannot ask what if questions. What has already happened? You need to move on. It's normal to do it a little bit, but don't overthink the entire relationship. Oh, what if I did this instead? Because hindsight is it probably would have ended anyways because that was meant to happen.
So it seems like you're drawing the line between sulking and just sitting in the pain and actually processing what you learned and what you can take from I guess, failure of a relationship and what you're going to take going forward, not just sitting in the pain. Does that sound right?
Yeah, and it's totally normal to sit in pain because it's totally fine to miss someone, but it's there are definitely like certain qualities in people that like don't like, right? And so you need to find those things that you do and then find them in a different person. I
Mhm.
can definitely name off certain things I've learned from each of the people I've dated and like, why that now is one of my standards for the my person now. If that makes sense.
Mm. So it's taking what you liked and trying to find it in someone else and then trying to distinguish what you didn't like and perhaps avoiding it in the next person. I think one thing I want to add that's just one thing I've thought about on this topic as to why we feel so much pain and during a breakup type thing, which I think it one way I would connect it's kind of like a miniature death, and that's why we have trouble moving on from anything. Is it's like a season of our life and almost a part of ourselves is dying to the past. So that's why when we graduate high school or graduate college, we get sentimental about it because it's a season of our life is basically dying. And likewise with a partner, when you move on, it's like a season of your life is dying. Or you get a new job, same thing happens. And I think that pattern repeats itself in so many different scenarios, and we get all sentimental. But what I would take from what you've just said is that you need to not focus on the sadness, but more so what you're able to take from that season, although it's over, and perhaps find the good parts of that in a new chapter and avoid the bad parts and really just use it as a learning experience.
Exactly.
Perfect. Well, so we've been on for 24 minutes, so I want to move into some last second fun questions before we hop off. First things first, what was something you did in a relationship in the past that looking back you find corny or cringe?
I don't like these questions. Horny or cringe? I think as a girl, I think that we act like a child sometimes, or like we get really pouty, and I still do that. But I think it's like I don't know what that head nod was, but I think that's something like corny that I do for sure.
You
But I'm
just
still,
pouty, and do
oh,
you do it consciously or do you just, is it looking back you're like, wow, I was being obnoxious?
I think a little bit of both. I think guys like it a little bit. There's a point where it's like I wouldn't do it to the point where I'm like gonna ick my person out for sure.
Now, the next question is, does height matter?
Are we okay? Height doesn't matter for me personally. I think as long as they're my height or taller, that's all I really care about. But most of the guys I've talked to are on the shorter side. I think most girls nowadays are like, oh, they have to be 6 foot. I'm like, girly pop, you're 5'2". They don't have to be 6 foot. Because I'm 5'6", and most of the guys I've dated are 5'9". They're all like, a little taller than me.
Height doesn't matter for sure. Last question is, are you racist?
Bro, you're definitely not putting this on the podcast. No, I'm
No.
not
Simple
racist.
question. It's a simple question.
No.
Kaylin, thank you so much for coming on. This will be up either today or tomorrow.
Today?
I don't know. It's not that hard for me to put this up, but I appreciate you coming on here. We'll probably have you on in the future because I think this did go really well. I think it flowed really nicely, and I think it was actually a pretty productive and profound conversation that we just had, as we normally do. No surprise there. But I appreciate you coming on. Is there any last words you would have for the people of my community?
Guys, I'm on the Atomic Lifestyle with Liam, and it is great. Liam really tailors it to each person and what you really need. So you should definitely check that out. Link is right here.
Well, thank you, Caitlin. Your last name's Kullnat, Kullnat. Just memorize that. But thank you for coming on, viewers. We'll see you next time, and peace out.